I first want to let people know that I will not list actual names or reveal the name of my high school or where I live. Also, it is quite obvious that I'm a teenager, but this is no reason to judge or deem my experience as untrue. I must begin by telling you what my English teacher saw, because my experience is similar to hers. She shared with me an experience that she had while staying late after school with her writing club members. It was in the winter, so the dark came quickly. She was in her classroom on the second floor packing up her things when one of her students screamed and ran into the classroom. My English teacher asked her what happened, and the terrified student stated that she saw a face in one of the classroom windows down the hall. My teacher laughed and calmed her down by telling her that most likely she saw her own reflection. The student left and drove home, and my teacher was alone in the building. She finished gathering her things, turned off all the lights to the classroom, and as she was exiting her classroom, a 7-foot-tall, solid black figure passed right in front of her face and drifted into the classroom. She left immediately. She saw the figure a few years before I enrolled. Now, I'll describe what I experienced. I was at the high school late that night because I'm part of the mock trial team and our meetings go until dark. It was after the meeting, and I was waiting for one of my parents to come and pick me up. While I was waiting, a friend and I went upstairs to ask my mock trial teacher a question. After she answered it, we decided to check out my English teacher's room to see if we could see the ghost. With no luck, we decided to head downstairs. We waited by our school's entrance for a while. After waiting another 5 minutes, I told my friend to wait there while I walked over to the main entrance to see if our parents were sitting in their cars in the parking lot by the main entrance. We were waiting in a hall of classrooms, and the hall was closed off to the lobby by a set of double doors with windows. Directly across the hall is the entrance into the boys' locker room, and there's a window that looks into the street and the street lights. I was looking through the double door windows, and I can see that the lobby was dimly lit by the street lights outside. I walked up to the double doors, and I was a good 4 feet away when I stopped. Outside the doors in the lobby, I can see a 9-foot-tall, solid black figure just floating in midair, swooping back and forth fairly quickly. I can make out a head and shoulders, but other than that, it didn't look human. It was opaque because it blocked out the light from the outside. After I saw this, I turned and sprinted back to my friend. I was terrified and out of breath. And as I began telling him what I saw, my mock trial teacher walked down the stairs and she heard me describe the entity. I left the building and waited for my parents outside. My experience differs from my English teacher's. The entity I saw was on the first floor, was much taller, and I was able to make out human features. Tell me what you think of this. I live in a rural area of Ohio called Hopedale, and we rent a 2-story house from a very elderly couple who also own a funeral home next door. I don't know if the events I'm about to describe has anything to do with our house neighboring a funeral home, but I need some insight, and maybe even some advice on what to do. Note also that I have never believed in ghosts or the paranormal up until last month. Okay, so since we moved in last month, we have been having a lot of electrical issues here in the house. For example, the downstairs bathroom lights blew out one night, and the landlord fixed it, but blamed us for it. He says this house has been electrically solid for 40 years until you guys moved in. So I brushed it off and figured, well, maybe we did do something to cause a short in the wiring. A couple weeks went by and nothing out of the ordinary until one night, around 1 a.m. I awoke sweating profusely from a very strange nightmare where I died in a car accident. I looked over and my fiancé is sound asleep. so I decided not to wake her. And I figured I'd tell her the next morning. I did tell her about the nightmare, and she said that she had a similar dream the night before. Instead, it was a bus accident in her dream. So we both shrugged it off as being absolutely coincidental, and went about our normal everyday lives until the night of November 23rd, 2011, when we both were awoken by children's laughter coming from downstairs around 2:30 a.m. We sleep upstairs, and our 1-year-old daughter sleeps in her room across from us in her crib. We woke up and heard the children's laughter. I immediately thought it was my daughter laughing in her crib, so my fiance and I went into Bailey's room to check on her. And as soon as we got up to see if it was her, the laughter stopped. We decided to check on her, only to find her sound asleep. Later that morning, around 10 a.m., we came downstairs to find all of Bailey's toys thrown out all over the floor as if kids were playing with them the night before. My fiance asked me if I did this as a joke. But honestly, I did not. And of course she didn't believe me, but I swear to you, I have no idea how Bailey's toys ended up all over the floor, especially since we always put them away in her toy box before we go to bed. It got me creeped out to the point where I'm thinking about moving us somewhere else. Any ideas or suggestions would be great. I'm a security officer. However, I will not mention the company I work for. I don't feel it would be appropriate to do so. For the sake of the story though, it was a hospital. That's all I can say about the facility that I was assigned to on that particular night. As a security officer, I have no more authority than you do as a common citizen. What I do, you can do. The only difference, I guess, is that a security officer gets paid for it. My job is to protect lives and property in accordance with the client's procedures. I keep alert. I use my senses when on patrol. Eyes, ears, and nose for trouble. When I come across something out of the ordinary, I always try to make a visual identification of the person or thing in question before contacting the authorities and or writing a report, for the exception of field notes. Most of the time, it is something like a coffee pot left on, a light burned out, or a light left on, an occasional rodent out for a late night bite. Or maybe some kids that should not be on the property. But on the night of August 26th, I could only speculate what was going on. I couldn't say for sure who or what it was I heard that night. My report of the incident was professional. This, however, will be more like a true story. I was on third shift, the Terrence level. I just got done with my patrol and was about to proceed to the elevator. It was about 4 a.m., I'd say. As I was checking an exit door nearby, I heard the faint sound of a conversation. It sounded like a group of men shouting out instructions to one another, as if it was a high-stress situation. It sounded like orders being given at a construction site. The only construction area, though, was in the old wing. It wasn't too far away from where I was. That's strange, I thought. No one that I know of is even down here. There was no one in the old wing. I was just there. Maintenance wouldn't arrive for at least another hour, and I had no incoming calls on the company cell. I was puzzled. Who could be down here at this hour, I thought, as I proceeded to another patrol of the terrace. I checked everywhere, including the old wing and the mechanical room, but there was no one there. Everything was normal and or quiet. The area where I first heard the conversation was now dead silent. I then proceeded to the various nurses' stations located on the floor above. Is everything okay? I asked. Everything's okay, they said. We'll call you if we need you. I received the same response from the nurse's station right above the area where I had heard the conversation taking place. I thought that maybe the sound of the conversation above had traveled through the pipes and/or system of vents. I checked outside and near the entrance to the terrace level, but nobody was around. I actually did that first before reporting at each of the nurses' stations. There was nothing going on that would account for what I heard. I did patrol of the terrace level about a half hour later at approximately 4:45 a.m. and heard the faint sound of clanging metal. I checked each of the mechanical rooms, the maintenance department, and the old wing, but everything checked out. I could not find the source of that sound. Anyways, all this running around caused me to be late. I was not a bit happy about it. The only thing that I can think of was that I heard the sound of a conversation traveling through the vents and/or water pipes, the sound of which would have become distorted by the time it reached me. This might account for what sounded like men hollering at one another. As far as the faint clanging sound I heard, it's hard to tell. It's an old building, it's bound to groan a bit. I did file a report on the incident, but I didn't indicate anything other than not being able to locate the sounds I heard. I'm sure that went over well. An officer did tell me when I was first assigned to the site that there were strange things happening on the terrace level. Like returning minutes later to find lights on that had just been turned off, locked doors found wide open, and strange light sources. I haven't witnessed any of that weird stuff. No one's ever told me anything like that. Anyway, I just thought that it was his way to make a new guard feel uneasy. Although I have seen elevators open and close when there were nobody in them. I've been meaning to bring that up to maintenance. It's nothing worth reporting though. Honestly, I'm more concerned about the living than I am a few resident ghosts for that matter. I hope you enjoyed this. I feel a bit of common sense reasoning makes a better ghost story. I'll chime in if something else happens worth mentioning. Please be sensible in your responses. Thanks. My dad used to buy things from eBay and sell them at their actual price. One day he got this old Ouija board. Its box portrayed it as a game, fun for the whole family. None of my sisters played with it though, and neither did I. Suddenly, weird things happened, even though no one touched the board. It was just sitting in the garage. One night was the first of many nights. I woke up at 3:04 a.m. exactly. I woke up scared for no reason, no nightmare, nothing, just scared with a bad feeling. I'd always just sit there awake and turn over and try to go back to sleep. This first night, I turned over and tried to go back to sleep, but when I turned and laid my head on the pillow, a moment after, a man's voice said directly into my ear laying on the pillow. But it was as clear as day. Go back to sleep. I jumped up and woke my sister, who shared a room with me, crying and scared. I stayed up all night. My sister could not have been awake, and the voice wasn't my dad's. No guy other than my dad lived with me. Another day, in the same house, I was watching a movie alone. I paused the movie and took the remote with me to the bathroom. When I came back, the disc was out and placed on the table next to the TV, and the disc drive on the Xbox was open, and my room was a mess. Another time, in the same home, I left the kitchen and heard something behind me. When I turned, I saw a man in a red shirt behind me, though I heard no doors open. I ran from him and turned back around. Then he was gone. My dad sold the board and we moved. I've had nothing paranormal happen since. I work in a daycare in Westchester, Ohio. The director of the daycare wants us to keep these things on the down low because they are afraid that parents will pull their children out of the daycare. But I am so interested in everything that has happened that I have to share it. The first odd thing I experienced while working at this daycare happened about a year ago. One Friday night a month, 2 employees will work what we call Parents' Night Out. We work from 8 till midnight and usually have around 5 or less kids. My coworker at the time, Katie, and I put a movie on for 2 kids that we had that night. They both fell asleep before 11. The room we were in was right next to the kitchen, and there is a big, open, glass-free window that connects the room to the kitchen. We both heard the sound of things falling in the kitchen, like utensils or dishes or something. We both freaked out because it was late and there was no one else there. I decided to go into the kitchen, thinking maybe something just fell over. However, there was nothing on the floor or on the counters. Everything was in its place and put away. I didn't really have anything happen after that night until this past April. I worked Parents' Night Out again. This time it was with my coworker Sarah. We stayed in the same room as before. And that night we had 5 children. 1 was a baby. And I told Sarah that I was going to go get a crib for him since the baby room was on the other side of the building. I carried the baby along with me. When I entered the baby room, all seemed normal. The cribs have wheels on them, so I went and grabbed one and started wheeling it towards the door. Just as I was about to leave the room, one of the baby swings started swinging. I breathed in real quick, stopped in my tracks, and put my hand up to my mouth. I was so afraid, I didn't know what to do. Finally, I grabbed the crib and kept going. I clutched the baby to my body with my other arm and ran out down the hall to the original room. When I returned to the room, Sarah could see that I was shaking and breathing heavily. I told her what happened, and we both decided not to leave the room again until the end of the night. When that time finally came, we left through the front door. Along the back of the side of the building are playgrounds and 2 gates to separate them. I saw that both gates were wide open. I know for a fact that I shut those doors before Sarah and I went into that building. The following Monday, another coworker, Amanda, confirmed that she also had a similar experience while in the building for Parents' Night Out. She looked at me and asked, "When did the swing start moving? Was it right as you were leaving?" I was stunned. It wasn't just my imagination. I decided that I was never going to do another Parents' Night Out. I had never experienced anything creepy during the day, so I was never scared to work usually. However, this past month, the children have been seeing a lot of things. I work with the toddlers around the age of 2. A couple weeks ago, one of my kids was sitting on the potty. We have a bathroom inside of our classroom, and it's right next to the kitchen area. I was sweeping while she sat in the bathroom. I heard her strike up a conversation. Thinking another child was in there with her, I turn around and look. She's sitting on the toilet, chatting away, and staring up towards her left, as if someone is standing by the toilet. However, no one is there, so I say, "Peyton, who are you talking to?" She looks back to her left and says, "Someone," but never said more than that. Last week, a boy in my class was lying on his cot during nap time. Sarah, the same coworker I did Parents' Night Out with, also teaches in the room with me. We were talking while the kids were settling down on their cots. We both at the same time look over at Aiden. He has his arms stretched out towards the bathroom, and he's saying, "Please come here, please come here." We break his attention and ask who he's talking to, and he only points to the bathroom. Yesterday, Peyton, the same girl that was in the bathroom, was lying on her cot towards the back of our room. I was sitting in a chair in the kitchen right next to the bathroom. I see Peyton start waving. Thinking she's waving at me, I wave back. she keeps waving, and I ask, Peyton, are you waving at me? And she shakes her head no. Today's the last thing I'm going to write about. My coworker Amanda claims that she was walking down the hall towards her room, which is the baby room. In that hallway, she passed our room, and then the room next to us. The room next to ours is vacant because the children were napping in the other room. She was holding one of the babies, which also happened to be her child. She said that he looked into the vacant room and started smiling. As they passed the doorway, he about jumped out of her arms, reaching for someone, although no one was there. I'm afraid, but also very interested at the same time. I want to know if there's truly a haunting, or if we're all just crazy and looking into everything too much. Ghouls, that was Ohio. These were a little bit better than North Dakota. North Dakota, you got like nothing going on. Like all of it's like normal hauntings, which is cool. You know, I'm not knocking normal hauntings, but this one was more interesting. And the daycare one at the end, that one really got me because I've worked at daycares for like 6 years. And kids do weird stuff and they always wave. Like, I can see, you know, the spirit there. So it's always interesting when I see them looking at the spirit as well. Because, like I've said in the past, I believe all children are born with this, you know, ability, I suppose you could say, of seeing spirits. But, you know, lose it as they go along their way in life. But, yeah, secret word of the day. It's going to be a weird one, alright? Are you ready? Coupons. Because I am couponing again, and oh my god, I forgot how fun it was. I love couponing so much. That's my cat. I don't know what it is about couponing. It's like, I don't know, the rush of getting a deal. Like, I go to CVS a lot, because CVS is my favorite place to coupon, and my total, when I bought all this junk, it was like $48, and then I used my coupons, and it went down to $22, and then I got $13 back to use next time. But it's so fun. So, secret word is coupon. But as always, the last video will be on the top left, the next video will be on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen, as well as in the description box below. And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.